Welcome to the Tech Simple podcast. Independent insights into the latest AV technologies, as well as tips and best practices to optimize AV solutions for modern workplace and learning environments. Here are your hosts, David and Jonathan from Konnectus AV Consulting.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Tech Simple podcast. I'm Jonathan Cuthbertson, and as always, I'm joined by my good friend and colleague, David Allara. Welcome, David.
Well, hello there, Jonathan, and welcome back from China. 3 weeks up there, mate. It was sad that you were up there. We missed you, but welcome back, and I'm excited once again to do another podcast episode. A guest we've been working with for a couple of years now, and really keen to have him on and talk to us about some advancements in what we've been doing, the work we've been doing together. It's all about audiovisual technology standards, and we're going to get into a bit of detail around that. But let me first introduce our guest. It's a gentleman by the name of James Cork, and James is with JLL. He's been working with JLL for a bit over 7 years. In various capacities in project management, program management, but always in the technology space, and now is the lead of corporate real estate for technology across APAC. So welcome, James.
Oh, thank you. Thanks very much for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you, James. I guess I can give a little bit of context around the work we've been doing together. We started in, I guess it was the beginning of last year, 2022, just looking at the standards you had in place there. It was called a Playbook. It was really a spreadsheet with some equipment for different room types, which I'm sure was useful. And we worked together, and by the end of 2022, we had put together something quite different in contrast. It had a lot of detail around every single room type, detailed equipment lists, the detailed schematics of how the equipment needed to be put together, the elevation drawings, the way the services needed to come together, so your power, your data, your interior design, your acoustics, and other related services. And really, Jonathan, just a much broader and more detailed set of documentation.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. We went from just really talking about equipment to really having a roadmap and a plan that can be used from project to project, not just for the people installing the technology, but also the other people on the project as well, so they have a clear understanding of what the tech was and what the requirements of their disciplines were as well.
So I guess in the outset, it'd be great, James, to get your view from a client's perspective. What do you think was the main benefit from transitioning from what you had to what you now have?
So, David, I think, obviously what we had was very much a starting point, something that I just kind of put together through various projects that we ran. I think being able to kind of go to, industry experts such as yourself to kind of go through, look at, okay, well, how can we better use the technology we have? How can we put that together so that our various kind of tiers of our offices, our top tier flagship offices all the way down to our satellite offices have that standardized technology, but very well explained as to how it should all be connected in. Probably some of the challenges we faced in the past was we'd have the standardized hardware, but it may be cabled differently. It may sit at different areas within the server room. The screens might be at different height. This really kind of captured everything to get those standards right, so that we were really making sure that, we could have someone in and pick up a schematic for an office in China or an office in Sydney, and they'll be able to follow it because they're basically more or less the same for all of our offices.
So I guess that's got to be helping with things like end user experience, reliability of the systems. There's that consistency, no matter where you are, whatever JLL office you're in across the APAC region, you as a person managing them and also the people using them and also the people installing, have that clear understanding. There's that consistency. What would you say is the greatest, in terms of priority advantage of maybe some of those things?
I think it's the consistency. And also probably the other thing I would say is there's also a lot of time saving in the planning stage and solution design stage of a new office fit out. I think that really helps us a lot because we don't have to spend hours documenting everything, go through step by step exactly how it needs to be set up. We're able to provide this documentation, which then allows our AV vendors, whether it be through a tendering process or a single AV vendor, to kind of essentially provide us all the information we need, get the schematics together, get all that information and ready for us to review.
So probably not having to reinvent the wheel time and time again. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
And what about from a budgeting perspective? Because I know that's important every time there's a new office or whatnot. You have to have an idea ahead of time, how much things are going to cost. And at least in the AV technology area, having some consistent standards, you can relatively accurately predict what things are going to cost. Is that a fair statement?
Definitely. I think it's probably been a little more challenging over the last probably 12 months as we've seen a lot of fluctuation in pricing. However, I think that, it does definitely help us to be able to get, a benchmark pricing for all of our projects. Obviously, different regions have different pricing models, so that does obviously have its own nuances there. But from an overall perspective, it really does help us from budgeting to kind of have that standard in place.
And tell us about, this could go to either one of you, Jonathan or James, how broad are we going? I mean, is it just sort of, a couple of room types, small, medium, large, or are we going a lot more broad with all types of different rooms?
I think from my perspective, I look at it from the standards, this is the everything. So we kind of look at it from a full AV perspective for an entire office. And that's really what we look at it from, be it from a meeting room to a focus room to our reception area as clients come in, to even to our breakout space where our staff are able to kind of have their lunch or their coffee or whatever. We even look at those areas there. So it's the complete entire package of an office.
There are instances, I'd agree with what you're saying there, James. The standards should cover all of those spaces, and 99% of the time, I think your standards will be able to cover them. You do, on occasion, though, you do need sort of a unique space or something that's brand new, or, you want to do something a bit different or forward thinking in a particular office, or a showcase maybe. In those situations, you really do have to take them case by case. And it's not something that would necessarily fit directly into standards, but you then take the principles of your standards and apply it to those rooms while still delivering that unique experience that might be you're trying to showcase.
No, I would agree. I think that there is that, and then there's obviously, also trying to make sure every new office you bring out has something new and different, and, whilst also trying to kind of use those standards as your foundation. I think that, a lot of our meeting rooms are fairly similar as we kind of, as they're set up, but I think that we do have a lot of customizable spaces where needed, in our presentation suites, for example, media suites that we do, even looking at seeing, some of our town hall spaces, we will kind of look at how we can, customize them to the local country, what they may want, what the space is, the architecture. There's obviously a lot of pieces that come into that we need to explore all those pieces, but we definitely try to use the standards as our foundation for those spaces.
Right, it's like the guide, it's the blueprint for those non-standard spaces. There's a lot you can pull from it to sort of shortcut the process and get you to the right outcomes with right results and the right user experiences, etc. All the more faster. And, JLL is a global company. We've obviously worked together with you, James, on standards for the APAC region. But what do you think in terms of standardizing at a global level? And Jonathan, would like to hear your thoughts on this too. What are some of the things that can be standardized at a global level? And then we'll also kind of talk about what can't and what needs to be more standardized at a local level.
I think for us, so for JLL, obviously we try to standardize our VC, for example, our video conferencing, where we're exclusively using Cisco kits for all of our video conferencing, bar potentially some peripheral cameras we might have in certain offices. We could globalize that. But when we start to talk about specific hardware items, sometimes they're not available everywhere. Sometimes they're not available in every country. So it's about, finding those substitutes and be able to work out, okay, well, we have our standards here. Is there an alternate brand, that's going to work for us in that country, and it's working through that. And I think it's being able to kind of, adapt depending on which country you're in, depending on which part of the world you're in as well, right? So, APAC is very vast and very different from country to country. As to what we were able to achieve. So, it's working with those local vendors to kind of make that work.
In the global sense, there are a lot of things you can standardize. When you're looking at a global level, I think the key thing to think about is the experience you're trying to create for the people using the spaces. And from a global level, you need to decide, okay, well, what are the main critical parts that should not and cannot change to be able to deliver that same experience across all spaces. And that's where, as you point out, James, like the video conferencing platform, that is a key piece of the puzzle, and it's something that you should be looking to standardize across your whole platform. And then, how do you actually interact? Do we only offer cable presentation or do we offer wireless? Now, you might not have to go into the specific details about the type of cable or the type of wireless presenting, but that as a user experience should be set at a global level.
No, I would agree. I think, and that's what we strive to do at JLL is to, if you should be able to walk into any meeting room and the experience should be the same. But it's, obviously that precarious kind of thing of, well, how do we keep technology progressing whilst also trying to keep that standard experience where for every office you go to should be at the same way to join a meeting, to do the things you want to do.
So are there things that I guess can't be standardized in your view, each of you? I definitely would agree with the point being made there of things you can't control, like supply chains. Different manufacturers have stronger supply chains in different countries, and we have no control over that. But I guess if we can have a desired outcome of this is how many button presses we need to get a meeting up and running, which might be 2 or 1 or 0, and then we've got to come up with, as designers, the equipment behind the scenes to make that happen. I totally get that. But is there anything you think that literally cannot be standardized?
I honestly think there is not much. Most things can be standardized. I don't know what would you think, Jonathan?
It's an interesting point. I think, technically, if I was to put my engineering hat, standardize absolutely everything. But it comes to a point of, okay, well, what's the benefit of that standardization? And do I want to go down to that low level nuts and bolts level? Like one example, you might say we use ceiling microphones, but to standardize, say, the color and the finish of that microphone, what benefit does that provide to the user experience? And you also want to kind of leave the ability for the localized design team to create the experience that they're looking for as well as provide a little bit more flexibility for supply chain challenges or availability of equipment in particular regions. You can go quite low. I think you can go down to a medium level of detail on all of your standardizations, but those nuts and bolts levels, I think you need to leave it up to the project team delivering a specific project to make those decisions based on the environmental conditions of that particular project.
I would agree, Jonathan. I think for me, it's really about the functionality. I think that those key functions should be within the standards, and they would stay, right. It's where we still want to look at the specifics, color, position, even things that positions can change slightly. We don't want to dictate exactly where a ceiling microphone is going to go. Obviously, we have some movement on that, right? Same with speakers, that kind of thing, working with your local designers, working with the client, trying to, make sure that everybody's, I guess, on the same page and be able to have those standards in place, but also be open to, compromise where we need to.
So this is probably a good transition into the next topic I wanted to explore with. We've worked with different customers over the years and put together standards. And I think that's becoming more and more prevalent as we're seeing, I wouldn't say commoditization, but the technology, especially in workspace or in meeting rooms, is becoming better and better, simpler and simpler, fewer and fewer components, which is a credit to the manufacturers who have invested heavily in this area over the last 2-3 years, especially as we're coming off the back of COVID. And I think there can be a bit of, once I've got the standards, I'm right, and I just need to, apply room type A to that room in my project and everything will be fine. Is it really that simple, James? I mean, and are working on a couple of actual fit-out projects with JLL at the moment. Is it really as simple as saying, that's the standard, we just apply it to that room in that building in that city and walk away? Or is there a bit more to it?
I think there's definitely a lot more to it, right? And I mean, at a high level, it sounds like that. But I mean, there's a lot of, I think there's a big part of it is actually education. It's working with, our end users. Often, in our larger offices, we will do group workshops to understand essentially what our end user are after, what do they want to do, and then trying to kind of fit that into what are the standards and educating them. This is how we would set up this room because this is within our standards, best in class. That's why we do it this way. And it's educating people. And I think once you get past that education piece that people start to understand, then I think in many cases does start to be that simple, as in, okay, that's the standard for this room, that's what's going to go in here, that's what's going to go into this room, and it makes it quite simple. But you do need to kind of educate, take people on that journey and get them there. But then I also think that then there are also design pieces you need to look at too. I think that, we could put in a standard and go, okay, we're going to have the room is going to have a round table, it's going to be this size and everything. Well, that's our standard. But then, for example, there's a room that's not quite like that, or the table is a round table that has 6 seats and it's not within our standards. So then we have to adapt our standards to fit the room type and how it is, not make the room type change to fit our standards. And that's the piece that you kind of have to work with for sure.
Right. So I guess that's, discussion amongst the different, people on the broader design team. So that's whether that's your architecture and, and interior designers, builders, services engineers. It all has to be coordinated together, I suppose, to take, the information as detailed as it may be in the standards and bring it to a shop drawing or as built in the end level so that it's, nice and seamless and looks like it's all meant to be there.
Yeah, it's a collaborative effort. And I think over the years of working with JLL, I've seen quite a change being, technology is at the forefront now. And I think we're having those discussions early. It's not like, not just JLL. A lot of organizations 2-3 years ago, AV and technology came after the design. The design was all done. Okay, now you just got to put your equipment in. Now it's very much we're part of that design journey from the beginning. And we're working together around how these rooms are designed, how the AV would work in that particular room. Do we need to modify things for it to work better? And working together with the designers, services engineers, with the end users. There's a lot of people involved to get that room right.
The standards really gives you headspace. And what do I mean by that? So having the standards already in place means you've already given a lot of thought to the user experience, the type of equipment, and how the room fundamentally goes together. And what that means is when you get to an actual project, you actually have the bandwidth and time to be able to spend with the rest of the design team to make sure that that's integrated well and seamlessly, rather than trying to not only design your AV system and think about functionality and also coordinate that in a very short period of time that, as we all know, projects are very time sensitive. Having the standards means I don't really need to think about the room functionality. I've already done that. I know about the architecture, and I can focus on delivering this space as best as possible in the built physical environment.
And I suppose just to wrap up on standards, guys, the one thing that we both, well, all three of us know, being in technology, is that it never stops evolving, changing, advancing. The standards can be documented and written down at a moment in time, but I think consistent review is a good thing, and also having that openness and flexibility, especially, James, as you're managing, real estate properties all across APAC, it's just a never-ending wheel, isn't it? There's one after another, and you've constantly got to review. Okay, well, what we've just installed, 6 months ago in one country was great. Now I've got some new spaces and new buildings to look at in another country. What's changed? I still want to maintain the integrity and relatively closeness to our broad standards, but I might need to make a few changes here and there because of advancements in tech. I mean, that must be a constant conversation or thought that goes through your mind.
Yeah, no, I think it's a real balancing act, trying to, ensure that we're keeping up with the latest technology while also trying to keep that standard experience that you can walk into an office in Tokyo or you can walk into an office in Singapore and you want to go into a meeting room and start a call. It should be the same. And that's really what we're trying to achieve here. But it's also about going, okay, technology has changed. We could be 2 years between those two offices that we've set up. What's changed, but how do we ensure that functionality is still there and that for the user, it's somewhat the same? And they walk in, they press start when they walk into the meeting room and their video conference comes up and starts working. That's really what it's about, trying to make it that standard approach and also trying to, make it easier and easier for them to do what they need to do when they go into a meeting room, to start a call, to have clients in to show a presentation. We just want to, it needs to be a really easy process, something that they don't have to think about and something that is more or less the same in every office, whilst also trying to ensure that we're using the latest technology. And it's a challenge. It's a challenge that, I think that a lot of companies are dealing with, right? And so it's just a matter of, just trying to work out what works for us and what technology is available, working with our stakeholders, working with our partners to kind of come up with best solutions.
So you've mentioned their partners. I mean, is it a case of you meeting regularly with your key vendors and understanding what's new, what's on roadmaps? I mean, do you, as a large global organization, sign NDAs to get a bit more insight than others? I mean, how does that really work?
Definitely. So we have a couple of our main partners that we work with, right? One of the big ones is Cisco. So we're, working with them to kind of understand what's new, what's coming, and then, obviously working with various other vendors as well around AV technologies, what's coming new to the market, what can we do? And then working with people like Konnectus, who obviously have a lot of knowledge as to what's going on, what's new to the market, what's something that's kind of, would work within our space. And I think it's about having those trusted partners that also understand the JLL environment, how we work and kind of what our existing platform is and kind of how we can make that better.
Awesome. Well, I think this has been very informative as usual. We talked about standards briefly in a much earlier podcast, Jonathan, you might remember, but as we had our acoustics part 2 podcast with Daniel Natoli, I think a couple of weeks ago, this is another example of having a very experienced guest bring a lot more validation and information. It's always good to get a customer side and what their experiences are and what their knowledge is and how they go about things. So, James, this has been fantastic to have you on the show, and I think it's highly informative for our audience. So I just want to thank you so much for taking the time and joining Jonathan and myself today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been great to sit and have a chat with you guys.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Tech Simple podcast. To like, share, or discover more episodes, head over to Spotify. If you'd like to talk to us about AV in your workplace or learning environment, book an initial discovery call with David or Jonathan at konnectus.com.au. And remember,